In the Marketing Cram app or on that Facebook page down the bottom for free, there's a video about how to do the response for Section 3 of the Business Studies exam. And that's something that people worry about is, oh, how do I do a business report? How do I write a business report? And once you go through the video and you go, oh, no, it's pretty straightforward, you just have the subheadings and all that, they forget about the fact that there's an entire extra section after Section 3 called Section 4. And Section 4 is worth 20 marks. Now, Section 4 isn't a business report, right? It's an extended response, but it doesn't actually say, what you need to do. Right at the top there, it says it's worth 20 marks. You pick either 27 or 28, so you only do one of these questions. But it says allow about 35 minutes for this section. There is no way that you should only spend 35 minutes on this section. My recommendation is usually you do about 15 minutes for the multiple choice, 45 to 50 minutes for the short answer, and then you spend 55 minutes to an hour for the report and for this extended response, because some of the things that some of the students write, it's so clear that there's obviously not just 35 minutes in that, and you have to compete with that, whether you like it or not, whether you should make it mandatory that they can only spend 35 minutes or whatever, so it's all fair. It doesn't matter, right? They're doing it, and they're doing it all around the state, and you should know that, and you should do the same thing. It is a very difficult thing to compete with them just writing for 35 minutes. Now, right up the top, there is a rubric, and the rubric tells you what you're going to be marked on. It says, in your entry, you'll be assessed on how well you. Now, you need to write things that are relevant to the question, okay, but you also need to present a sustained, logical, and cohesive response. Now, you're looking up the top there. For Section 3, it says, in the form of a business report. Here, it doesn't say that. So, theoretically, you could write a business report if you really wanted, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't do a business report. I don't want you confusing the marker into thinking, oh, this person doesn't know that this is clearly the essay section, even though it doesn't say essay, it doesn't say extended response. It doesn't tell you exactly how to answer it. What I would do usually, I recommend that you go for like a hybrid. So an essay, but with the syllabus subheadings. And I'm going to explain, how that works and why I would do it. I wouldn't do things like dot point lists or diagrams that you might do in a business report. Because a business report is really very, very different. If you think of a business report is really for a busy manager or an owner to get some advice from an expert. This section is really about some current case studies and current issues in business, and you're more writing about it. It's kind of more like a newspaper article than a business report, because you're giving some information. Now, the last thing and the most important part is where it says you have to apply relevant business case study or case studies and contemporary business issues. You have to do that. You have to include them. And if you go to the marking guidelines for question 27 in the specimen paper, and I know the Board of Studies is going to come after me and, oh, he's used it without our express written permission, all that. I really don't care. Question 27 in the marking guidelines, it actually says in the 9 to 12, so to get a minimum of 9 out of 20, state average is usually about 10. So to get even the average, you have to use business case study. And you can actually use multiple business case studies and still only get 9. In fact, you could still only get between 5 and 8. You can refer to multiple business case studies and still only get between 5 and 8. So it becomes a really important thing when you realize, oh my God, if I don't use a case study, really, I'm putting myself right down in that bottom category unless I do something extraordinary in the other parts where I might get up into 5 to 8. I'm really going to get nowhere without using the case studies and using them effectively. And there's another video on the Facebook page or on this app if you're looking through the operations app that shows you how do you study those case studies. What do you do in order to write dot point notes for each of your case studies. Now, the question itself in the specimen paper, so we're all kind of working from the same exam. Question 2728. If you look at the exam specifications, they're different from previous years. Previous years, and if you've got a teacher that hasn't looked at this and just kind of goes, oh, it's kind of like the old syllabus, or you've been getting that all year, like, oh, these are the notes, but they're for the old syllabus, but you can kind of relate them to the new syllabus. First of all, that's really lazy. But second of all, if you look at the exam specifications, they've changed for this section. It used to be the business report and this section would cover all 5 topics if you added them together. But now this section says each question will be drawn from a different topic, right? And if you look at the questions, that's exactly what it does. If you look at the mapping grids in the specimen paper, you can see section 3 at the business report, and it covers operations, marketing, and finance. But when you go to section 4, it only covers operations and then the subheading influences, and everything comes under it. And question 28 covers human resources and the section about effectiveness of human resource management. So you can see that each question really only does come from a different topic, right? A different part of a different topic. It's not covering 3 different parts of the syllabus and having to put them together. Now, the good part about this is this. The syllabus itself has a very repetitive structure. So if you look at operations, it's role, influences, processes, strategies. If you look at marketing, role, influence, process, strategies. Finance is the same. Human resources is the same, except they've added the tricky little effectiveness down the bottom there. I'm not entirely sure why they need to do that. But you've got basically 4, 8, 12, 16, plus that last one in human resources, 17. You've got 17 basic different essays that they can ask you about. Yeah, they'll add a little bit of a twist, but you've got 17 essays that you can kind of prepare, and then you know what you need to write for each, but then prepare for the twist. Know that there's going to be a twist there, and make sure that you get your answer to follow that, and really apply that. Now, we're only going to look at question 27, because if you're looking at this video in the operations app, this is the operations question. So this is only about operations influences. How does an understanding of the influences on operations contribute to business success? So the contribute to business success part is the twist. So we go to the syllabus, we go to operations, we go to influences. So we have to talk about those things, right? Globalization, technology, quality expectations, etc., etc. But you have to use case studies. There's no case studies there. Where are the case studies in the syllabus? Case studies are at the top of each topic. So it says students learn 2, and then you've got business issues and case studies. Now the business issues usually are going to have case studies in them anyway. So you can just kind of generally call those all the case studies. But they might also involve like the government and all that. So if you look up the top, you've got where the case studies go. But the problem is the Board of Studies put them all at the top rather than specifying where you need to look at case studies. So which case studies, which of these dot points up the top fits in influences? Which of them fits in role? Which of them fits in strategies? It doesn't tell you. So if you go to the Cram app and you go to the main page, there's a syllabus button. You can see that the syllabus there has been done in a kind of colorful way. It's been color-coded and it's been split up. So you can see, that's the first page, there's a second page, but you can see you've got role of operations management, influences, and processes, and you can see the pink bits there, pink boxes, no, that's wrong too, the pink rectangles, they tell you which case studies go under which area. So if you zoom that in, you can see under influences, we've got those dot points, we need to talk about those. But then we also have 3 current business issues, which kind of issues/case studies. Examine the impact of globalization on operations, the breadth of government policies that affect operations, and why corporate social responsibility is a key concern in operations management. So if you're asked a question about influences, these are the kind of things that they're going to be asking you about. These are the main things that you need to talk about. Yes, you can talk about technology. Yeah, you can talk about cost-based competition. But where are your case studies going to be? You're not going to have a case study for every single dot point in the syllabus. And it's going to be painful trying to memorize one. You can, and if you can possibly do it, then it's recommended, go find a case study for every single dot point. But really, what they can ask you about are these main things, these 3 main current business issues. So you should have case studies, you should have information for those things. Now, when you go to the marking guidelines are going to say answers could include, and then you've got those influences, right? So those 8 things, those influences. But you'll also see that, you've got those, but then you've got supply chain management and outsourcing. Now, those are not in the influences section. Then right down the bottom, you've got success of a business could be assessed by a range of factors. So you've got operational goals, okay, but you could have financial goals, you could have marketing goals, you could have human resource goals. Now those are not in the influencer section. The reason for this is that's kind of the twist. The question asks you about influences, but it asks you, how does an understanding of those influences then contribute or lead to a business succeeding? So you kind of get to measure how a business measures its success. So you might say, okay, financial goals. If a business is looking to increase its profits, then it needs to understand what government policies are affecting it. It needs to understand that corporate social responsibility can lead to good publicity in marketing and can then lead to higher profits in finance. So you kind of get to choose how to assess whether the business is succeeding or not. Now, the good part is that it says in the answers can include part that it could include information not specifically drawn from the syllabus, but as long as it has validity in terms of the question asked. So you can, it's kind of up to you a little bit how you answer it, as long as you link it back to the question. And this is the same in the business report, and it's the same in pretty much all of the HSC. The markers are looking for ways to give you marks. They're not necessarily going, when I'm marking the HSC, and the advice that I get is that they're looking for ways to give you marks. Look for marks, right? They call it positive marking. Don't look for reasons to take marks off, even though secretly they do. But don't look for ways to take marks off. Just look for ways to give people marks. If they've said something that makes sense, don't punish them just because it's not the syllabus dot point, right? As long as you do have the syllabus dot points in there and you do also include extra stuff, that's a good thing. Now, looking at the exam booklets, you've got 26 lines per page. You've got 3 pages per booklet. Now, they're going to be scanned in. I think last year or last 2 years it's been computer marked, not marked by a computer, but it's been marked on screen. So I think this year they might be going to home marking. I don't know, maybe they're marking still at a marking center, but on a screen. So the marker is going to be presented with that on a screen. Now, what I would do, and what I suggest to my students, it's not necessarily about how many booklets can you get through, but it is about how many pages you can use. So I would suggest that the first page is always a planning page, and you write nice and big, right? Now that's my actual handwriting, and it's really bad, so that's why I type everything. I would write nice and big, plan, to make it clear this is the plan. And then I would go, all right, what am I going to write? Introduction, okay, that's one way to fill a line. And then I would pick globalization, government policies, corporate social responsibility, and then I'll have a conclusion. These are not single paragraphs. I would have probably 2 or 3 paragraphs in each section. Like globalization, 3 paragraphs, government policies, 3, sort of CSR, 3. I wouldn't just have one each. I wouldn't just have 5 paragraphs altogether, because they would end up being very, very long. And long paragraphs are very, very painful to mark, because you just end up with pages and pages of wall-to-wall text, and it's very irritating. Anyway, so what I would write underneath is I would then write, for the introduction, how I'm going to link an understanding of influences with business success, right? And how you do that is up to you. But really, in your introduction is telling the marker, I'm answering the question. It doesn't need to be some long-winded, fancy thing. It has to kind of get to the point, because, the business studies teachers generally are not English teachers. They really just, they want you to get to the point. You don't need to be too fancy, but you do need to answer the question properly, and then say what you're going to talk about in part 2, 3, and 4. It is important in understanding the influences to discuss or to evaluate or to whatever the effect of globalization, to understand how government policies affect businesses, and how corporate social responsibility is a key concern in operations management. Right? So that is what I would do in my intro. Now, for the rest of them, I would just write down the things that I would forget. There's nothing better than going into a 3-hour exam, straight away heading for the extended response sections, writing a plan, getting it on paper, all the statistics, all the facts, all the points that you're worried that you're going to forget, write them down, right? They're not going to disappear right? Unless you're writing in lemon juice or something. No, person in the exam room is going to come and liquid paper it out. There's no better feeling than 15 minutes into the exam. You've got all your answers planned out. It's all on paper. You just have to fill it out now. You just have to add words like and the and but, and you can remember those. But it's much better to get that off your chest straight away. I would also write what case studies I'm going to use in each section. What's my case study for globalization? Or what are my 2 case studies for globalization? What are my 2 case studies for government policies? Now, how do I do that? Well, you look on the other video at how to use case studies, but I'm going to look a little bit at how the Facebook page works. Now, the pages themselves, this is what they look like on screen to a marker. Obviously, it's going to be much messier, and I thought I'll do it in the handwriting, but it doesn't really matter. You can see, all right, yeah, this person, they've used paragraphs, right? And it's what looks like 3/4 of a page. It's a little bit more, but human way of doing things. You go, all right, is it half? No, it's more than half. It's less than 4. It's 3/4. If you look at that, that might be a really good answer, right? But what we want is more white space. And by doing that, we've stretched out a 3/4 of a page into a whole page. Now, still, that's not really good for a marker to look at. So if you're using case studies, you can see, if you look at it, that the rest of it's like just gobbledygook. But you can see business case study, business case study. So that's where the case studies would be. I would highlight them. And there's always this controversy about, oh, my teacher said you shouldn't highlight. That's rubbish. Highlight, right? If you over-highlight, that's stupid. But if you highlight, you're making the marker's job easier. There is no marker that's going to go, oh, you made my job easier. You've just highlighted all the things that I'm supposed to look at. How dare you? That's horrible. How could you? Of course they're going to, they're not going to give you extra marks, right? They're not going to go, oh, I like pink. They're going to go, okay, I can see that this person has actually covered everything. If you think that markers are perfect, like your marker is likely is a teacher, and it could be your teacher. So if you think your teacher is perfect, like if you're one of my students watching this, you'll know that your teacher is. But if you think your teacher is perfect, you're an idiot, right? The teachers go to work all day and then mark, or they mark all day. You need to think, what is a marker after working all day, and then it's 8:30 at night, or after marking all day, looking at the same response all day, or the same 2 responses all day. You're going to be feeling fairly drunk. Not literally drunk. Well, I mean, I guess if you really want to, you can't drink during marking, but it doesn't say you can't drink before. You got to remember that these are human beings, and any marker that says I pay 100% attention to every word in every exam that I read at the speed they do it, it's rubbish. It just can't happen, right? Like, I've done it a couple of times, and marking extended responses, and it's so difficult to keep focused. So you do try your best. It's fantastic, but they're still human. So just highlight, help them out, right? One thing you don't do, that Qantas. I know that guy, was it David Broadbridge? I know he's written the Qantas case study. I know that Band 6 students use it. I know that, Asians memorize the entire thing, right? Okay, other people memorize it as well. That's being stereotypical. The problem with using the Qantas case study is that other people use the Qantas case study. And that's going to do a couple of things. First of all, the marker's going to get sick of reading it. The marker has read this same Qantas case study that this guy has been making money off every single year for so many years. They've read the same thing over and over and over, right? So they're going to get bored with it. Yeah. The other thing is that if I were doing it, I would be nervous because my memory isn't that good. And other people's memory is fantastic. They seem to be able to memorize huge amounts, like huge chunks of text. I would be nervous that the person who, the school that came before me, or the students around me, that they will have used it better than me, which is going to make me look worse, right? So you're going to bore the marker. You might end up looking worse. You're definitely not going to interest the marker. No marker is going to pick up an extended response and go, ooh, they've used Qantas. Wow, I haven't seen this before. They're not going to do that. It's going to Qantas. And it might actually end up making you look bad. Also, sometimes, and I've read the Qantas case study, sometimes he's really stretching it, right? He's going, okay, I want to cover this dot point in the syllabus, and I have to make it about Qantas, but he's really stretching it. There is usually a much more interesting and better case study to use for that dot point than Qantas. Qantas should be used, yeah, all right. It's good for industrial disputes. It's good for cost and quality issues and things like that. But it's not good for every single dot point in the syllabus. All right. So if you also want to, you can also add subheadings. And I would say add subheadings. It's what I would do, because now what you've done is you've taken what was 3/4 of a page, and you've now not only filled the page, but you go on to a second page as well. Now, the reason that I would do that is that you've now taken something that looked fairly plain, and was only 3/4 of a page, and now it kind of stands out. You can see you've got different businesses: Newcrest Mining, National Australia Bank, Woolworths. You can see that you've addressed the dot point in the syllabus. One of them that they're asking about globalization and its effect. And the fact that it says globalization's effect on success and the word understanding, it also shows that you're answering the question. So straight away, within 9/10 of a second, the marker can look at this and know, I have to give this a pretty good mark, because they've covered these things. They're using case studies. They've logically structured it. I know they've logically structured it because they put a plan at the start. So it becomes very, very difficult for the marker to give you a bad mark. Now, I'm not saying that I can guarantee that you are going to top the state, but I focus with my students, and my students are in Mount Druitt, so it's a key focus. I focus on trying to make them make sure that the marker can't give them a really, really low mark. Make it as difficult as possible for them to give you a low mark, right? Give them as many reasons possible to give you a good mark. Now, going from that to that is a good thing, especially if you're a marker who's been marking for the last 7.5 hours, or you've been teaching all day and now you're marking in the afternoon, or you're at home and you're marking and 11 o'clock at night. You might look at it like that, right? Everything's just a big blur. And okay, yeah, you're reading all the words, and yeah, you're perfect and all that. But look at that. You can still tell that this is a good student. You can still tell, all right, this is this is at least a B response, because look, they've covered the syllabus. They've got a range of different, case studies. They've spaced it out. They've logically structured it. It's a good response. Whether it's actually brilliant or not, it is not really the issue, right? So going back to this, what do you do with those case studies? This is where the importance of this Facebook page comes in. If you're watching on the Facebook page, then you're already here, it doesn't matter. But on that Facebook page, if you're looking at this through the Operations app, the HSC Business Days Cram Apps page, I've got a system of working out exactly when news stories actually fit into particular parts of the syllabus. So every time a news story is published that fits into the HSC Business Studies course, it gets added to this page. Now, it's not any tiny little dot point of the course. It's those compulsory case study areas and those compulsory business issue areas. And since June, I've said about 100, 110, 115 or something. And it's usually, about 5 or 6 every 2 days, so that you always have the latest case studies. So what it does is I share the link. I tell you which part of the syllabus it comes from, which topic, and which specific subheading. I give you a little summary. So for this, this is effective government policies and operations, and the summary there is the government is going to subsidise Emirates to keep them in South Australia. And then after that, there's a joke about Adelaide, because Adelaide's a joke. You get that, you click like on it, and then you get those free forever. So if you're in year 11 especially, then those are going to save your life, because you are going to have all those case studies that 90% of the state isn't going to have, right? Now, if I was doing these paragraphs, this is how I would use the Facebook case studies. And I just copied and pasted, from the Facebook page so that you can see how easy it is. All right, second paragraph was about effective globalization operations. You could use National Australia Bank. They had bad results, blamed it on globalization. So you can say that if you don't understand globalization, like National Australia Bank is saying that, they haven't really responded well to it, then you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle to have success. What's your measure of success? Well, it says there that their results, right? So their third quarter profit, so their net profits weren't very good, like only 1.2 billion. Ooh. All right, so that's one case study you can use with the measure of success linked to the syllabus. Another one would be Newcrest Mining. A lot of people pulling out of Newcrest Mining because of their country risk. They're working in developing countries, same as BHP, but they're working in the wrong developing countries. The third paragraph about government policies, effective government policies. You can look at a positive effect on a business, like Emirates getting government subsidies. And you can say, look, Emirates understands what the government policy is. They want to keep Emirates in South Australia. So they are going to subsidise us to be here. So it's worth our while. So that contributes to success because the sales are going to be higher. Also, Woolworths, when they handed out all that money, the Woolworths really just pocketed most of it from Australians. They saw their sales increase after the government handouts. They also need to realise what happens when the government handouts stop and what's going to happen to their sales there. Along the same lines, you've also got government policies about the car industry in Australia. And the federal government, Victorian government, all of the governments are still allowing the car industry to have subsidies and tariffs and things like that. And you're looking at companies like Ford and what they get in terms of government assistance and government policies. The government really just won't fully abandon them, and they know that, so they're working around that. And the last paragraph about the importance of corporate social responsibility, the idea of legal regulation and all that also comes into it. The poker machines. So Woolworths owns about 12,000 poker machines. They don't have them in Woolworths. They have them in the pubs that they also own. They have lots and lots of pubs, which people don't really know about. And that article actually looks at how corporate social responsibility is going to affect them. When they have their annual general meeting, they've got to discuss, we need to work out what to do. Are we going to be responsible and do the right thing? Are we going to put $1 limits? Are we going to wait until the government forces it? What are we going to do? There's also ANZ, when one of the ex-bosses said, they're all greedy and all that. Corporate social responsibility can also, have negative effects, and customers can punish them. How do you study for Section 4? Well, the first thing you do is you memorize the syllabus. In business studies, it's all about memorizing the syllabus. I had a year that, everyone got over, I think they got over 50, and 50 is a bad mark, but they all did get over 50. A bunch of footballers come in after lunch, about half an hour late, sweaty, couldn't learn anything. All I did with them is I made them just memorize the syllabus. And in their minds, they all passed. So they were all happy, right? But you can get over 50. Just memorizing the syllabus is so much about, making sure that you know what subheadings are in each section and all that. But especially for you better students, you need to know not just what the subheadings are, but which ones are in each section and which case studies belong in each section. So if you go and you look at the other video about how to use case studies, it kind of splits it up and shows you. You've got, in that role of operations management, you've got 3 case studies or 3 issues that you need to have case studies for. Under influences, you've got another 3. Under operations processes, you don't have any, right? You don't have anything for like Gantt charts and or Gantt charts or critical path analysis. You don't have case studies for that. You can do optional ones, that's fine, but there's no compulsory case studies for it. So you know that, all right, that's not the focus here. If they ask you an essay question, a Section 4 question about operations processes, you're going to struggle to think of case studies for that because it really wasn't envisaged in the original syllabus for that to be asked. Now, you also need to make sure that you understand every dot point. Now, and that's where the CRAM apps come in. At this stage, reading the textbook and reading the same textbook as everyone else, it's really not going to help you. The CRAM apps, they go between about 2.5 to 3.5 hours of videos. Every single dot point goes through and explains everything, and they're on the App Store, or you've already got it, and that's how you're listening to this. And you also need to write dot point notes for the case studies that you're going to use in each section. So if you see the how to use case studies videos, you'll see that, that's how you do it. You write some dot point notes about how the management reacted. You write some statistics about, whether it worked or not. And you just get on that Facebook page, stay on the Facebook page, click like. It'll just get delivered straight to you when you wake up in the morning and you check it. It'll just be, oh, wow, someone's done all the work for me. That's fantastic. So hopefully that helps you for Section 4 in the Business Studies exam.